Morning, everyone. How's it going? Good. Great. Um, Thank you, Penguin and Perry, for inviting me to talk to you today. Can you guys hear me? Are we good? Great. Um, just to feel the crowd a bit, raise of hand. Who here is B2B? Who is B2C? Oh, we got a few. Okay. Who here is startup? And who here is enterprise? Okay, and the rest are silent. Okay, got it. Um, it's I was listening to my colleague here speaking a few minutes ago, and it's always good to hear what other people are doing with their marketing budget, because it says, okay, sometimes I'm doing things right. Apparently, we don't get to meet a lot and kind of compare notes, so it's good we have these events. Um, a little bit about me. My name is Yanay. The John part is because we work with Asia, and if you know about working with Asia, they can have the most ridiculous name in the world, and then it's shortened to something English. So I went the same route. Um, Formerly head of Pan Online, which was at the time one of the big digital agencies in Israel. Then CMO for Galatea, which got acquired in 2015. Currently CMO of Appsee, which is the world's largest qualitative analytics platform for mobile applications. Um, Appsee's road, led by their founders, was really interesting from a startup point of view, because they already said from the beginning, we don't want to take the bigger, huge company quickly, similar web, apps flyer type, take 50, 100, $150 million, and let's get to 1 billion valuation, do maybe an IPO. They said, we want to retain as much of our company as possible. And they only took one round of investment for about 4.5 years ago of 2.5 million. Company now is, if everything goes right, next year will be around the 15, 18 million AR without any rounds of funding. So I'll show you a little bit about how we did that. And I apologize in advance if there's some overlaps, but I'll try to give my input on some of the subjects discussed here. By the way, this is not a monologue, so if you have questions, raise your hand or just interrupt me. So how much should I spend in 2019? Just to have context, because again, I'm working in a vacuum. I have no idea how other people have been budgeting for the last 10 years. I've Googled, how do you budget for B2B or for SaaS for 2019? And I've seen all kinds of crazy models of the budget should be 24.5% of the overall revenue, or the budget to be 65% over the expenses that were last year times the multiplier. I call BS, because every company is a snowflake. Um, there are other ways to effectively look at your budget. Before I even go into a couple of strategies I can propose that you can take, just thinking about this one question that's I think it's very important to ask. Um, what have worked for us this year? There's a bit of there's a bit of an issue with this, because marketing leaders or anybody who is actually tackling the budget are people that actually executed these things last year. And the last thing we want to do when we pitch to the CEO, to the CFO, our budget is saying, well, 90% of what we did was wasting the company's money, and that's why we're not going to do it anymore. So it's kind of like an internal balance between really having clarity, and on the other hand, really saying, well, maybe we could use it and maybe we can spend it in other ways. I know there's also frustration with some of the marketing channels that everybody has been kind of promising us that work, and we found out really doesn't work. Um, at least not for majority of businesses, but is something that I usually say. If you think there's a marketing channel in B2B that's supposed to be very, very effective, but for you is not effective, um, consider who has been writing all these articles about this channel being really effective. If you dig deep enough, I think you might find it's the manufacturers and the vendors of the actual tools trying to sell you what they're doing, right? So not to say nothing works and everything is a lie, but a little bit of that. Okay, so here's how I look at each and every funnel. So I have a marketing analyst for the last 2 years, and that's the one of the first, I call it luxury hire. So a marketing analyst is a luxury hire. Why? Because if you're leading marketing, you can basically have the good life of asking the important questions and then have somebody else dig up data if they're smart, and then a data analyst, that's amazing. So basically what we did, prep him for 2019, as we looked at all the different, each and every single funnel that we used in 2018, some that are actually we killed in 2017. And we looked at the following numbers. So prospects could be obviously the traffic, the views, whatever you want to call it. Then the conversion rate to leads, the conversion rate from leads, inbound leads to SQLs. There's a bit of a different definition for each marketing person with SALs, SQLs, etc. Let's say prospect that end up in demos, okay, or a sales conversation. Then the amount of people that go from a sales conversation to being an opportunity, meaning there's action items and there's continuous conversation towards some sort of a sale.
What's SAL?
SALs are sales accepted leads. So some people put SAL before and some people put after. I'll explain my terminology. MQLs are marketing qualified leads, meaning marketing says to an SDR, sales development rep, the first line of engagement, go after that lead. Sales qualified leads are SDR saying, okay, we've researched that lead. It's a good lead. It engaged with us positively. Now a sales guy should talk to him, an account exec, as they like to call themselves, right? Then those are still SQLs. The sales guy goes on the call and have the demo, sales talk, whatever. And if there's next steps to actually continue the conversation, it means that the account executive usually opens up an opportunity, meaning there's potential money to be made there. And that means that's an SAL. It's a sales accepted lead. And I really, I want to strengthen my colleague's point about the vision of how marketing and sales. I'm not going to go into that because I don't want to ruin the content for Perry's next meetup, but it's much easier defending your output as marketing if you put out sales calls that are SALs, sales accepted leads. So that's my SLA with my CEO, with my VP sales, SAL, sales accepted leads. You don't care where I'm getting these leads from. You don't care if I did 1,000 webinars and conferences, or I spent $5 million on Facebook PPC campaigns, because I deliver a certain amount of sales accepted leads, which are leads or meetings that your account executives thought could lead to a deal. And that's the ultimate KPI that brings us together. Because otherwise, you fall into some of the debates I'm sure some of you already experienced between marketing and sales that says, marketing says, well, salespeople are not closing enough deals. We give you so many leads and such good leads, and you're just not closing good enough. And of course, sales will come and say, but the leads were not of good quality, they were flaky, etc. So this really kind of aligns both teams to say in front of each other and the CEO, okay, so I gave you X amount of SALs a month. You already have history of closing rate. Each persona, each segment, each vertical, each geo, whatever you look at, has a certain close rate because the company has a little bit of a history. So we know that out of every five SALs, you're supposed to close one deal with an average income of Z, which is also good for forecasting, which is how we approach building the budget. Because what we do basically is nothing starts with marketing, unfortunately. We have to kind of accommodate the high-level board and CEO goals, and the high-level board and CEO goals are ARR, our monthly revenue, yearly revenue. But once you start getting a few of these numbers, you can kind of reverse engineer and say, okay, so I want to make $10 million next year. For $10 million, with, let's make it really simple, for a 100,000 average deal size means I have to have this amount of deals, which means I have to have, because I know already the conversion rate between leads and deals or demos and deals, these amounts of demos. And then us as the marketing people can say, okay, so these amount of demos can only be generated with, and you reverse engineer, these amount of prospects. Now let's see, where can I get these prospects? And let's see what were the channels that kind of performed better for me. But I think looking at that funnel and analyzing it for whatever period backwards, you'll start seeing that every funnel kind of behaves really, really differently. Because some leads will have a bad conversion rate here, but will be very good in terms of close one. There'll be 1 out of 3 or 1 out of 2. And some leads you'll have in the masses and you'll have a bunch of demos, but they'll not end up closing. Again, really depends on your business, but it could be persona, geo, context, intent related, whatever, however you want to slice and dice the data that you have about those opportunities. So the point here is to go and look at those funnels that worked, multiply them, forecast them towards, and work backwards from the goals that the CEO committed to the board for, and see how you can deliver it, and then say, okay, this is what you want. This is what this is how I'm thinking of getting there. This is what I'm going to do, and this is how much I need. One piece of advice with looking at that's for budgeting, but it's generally for reporting. That's if you ever come as a marketing function, as a VP marketing, as a CMO to the board, and they invite you to the board, you get that honor. It would be better if this would be good, cost per marketing qualified lead, but this would be even better. So customer acquisition cost is kind of a flaky thing for B2B, and I see most of you are. It's cost per sales qualified lead, because that's what actually matters, because it kind of jumps over all of the things that don't matter in the end. What matters in the end is how much did you spend, how much did you get for an opportunity? And then really is hands off, because that's for the sales team to kind of close. So I would argue it's better to start using this if you have the means. Last thing about looking at last year, and then I'll go into the next year, when we looked at data. Attribution. So this is obviously a headache for everyone in the marketing industry, wherever you are. There's better and better technologies and methodologies to kind of go into that. I actually wrote a very deep analytical article about this. If you want, you can find it on my LinkedIn. I'll give you the high level overview of how we approach in the past few years attribution. So we see 3 levels of attribution. Why are we looking at attribution? To give you context, to know what worked really well, even though sometimes it doesn't appear on paper. So 3 levels of attribution. The first level of attribution is what you see in your Google Analytics, in your CRM, in your Salesforce, whatever, in your Marketo, whatever it is, HubSpot, sorry. Whatever it is, that's the first tier attribution, because you put all the UTMs, the CPN IDs, all the tracking metrics, whatever it is, you put it on a link, somebody clicked it, somebody clicked a few other links, everything gets recorded, and then you can see, okay, so this particular digital activity brought me this particular lead that then end up being a particular opportunity. However, we all know that there's so much life around this first tier of attribution, and it's such a headache as a marketing function to prove that there's more effect to it. So then we have 2 other layers of attribution. Let me introduce you to that. Again, high level. If you want to do it, you need to go to the deep level, go to the LinkedIn. The second one is something that the actual platforms, the big advertising platforms, the social network, the Googles, the LinkedIns, the ad rolls, the Facebooks realized. And they said, you know what? Marketers cannot prove to their budget holders that we give them all the value that we know and they know, or at least they feel, that we give them. So we're going to introduce a new concept, a few years. It's called VTC. It means view-through conversions. That concept of view-through conversions that you can see in each of those big platforms reports means this is not somebody who saw the ad, clicked the ad, went to the landing page and converted. This is somebody who saw the ad, and then within 30 days ended up converting on your page, maybe coming from a direct, from organic, from a different channel, but they saw the ad. So we want to tell you, you see this lead? They saw the ad on this platform even though they didn't click, which is where we lose most of our proof to the fact that this channel is working. So if you don't do it already, seek out the VTC, view-through conversions, on most of the big platforms. We'll have to believe them, because basically it's believing blind what they say. Well, I'll give you extra 120 leads this month on Facebook ads. You can't track it, but I'm telling you, I show them to 120 people that ended up converting. It depends on how kind of suspicious you are of people or in general. I usually tend to believe it. It's for your proving of the budget. So we're on the same time. We're on the same side in this case. So that's the VTC. That's the second layer of attribution, what you get from the platforms. The third level is where it gets wacky, but basically what it means is you also get leads that you cannot prove saw your ads and ended up converting. How do you do that? By just building some sort of a simple forecasty statistical model that says, okay, if I got X amount of leads here and Y amount of leads here, I have reason to believe I'll get Z amount of leads here, and how much money they bring me. I'll just take the same conversion rate and the same opportunity to dollars, closed won, as the other two. So after kind of high-level coverage of the attribution, you see exactly what happened. You're equipped with all the different tactics that you want to employ in your marketing budget. So 3 approaches to budgeting that all 3 of them actually work. And the third one is what we use. The first one is the simplest ever. 2 times the budget, 2 times the results. If you want to do 5 times what you did last year, give me 5 times the budget. It's that simple. Of course, it's never that simple, but this type of simplicity actually is refreshing in the world that we live in, where all the time we're trying to prove, we're trying to chase the Bigfoot, and looking at it straight ahead will give you some peace of mind. Actually works. 1. The second one, we touched upon it a bit, is reverse engineering the marketing strategy, right? So I know where the CEOs want to get to. I'm building the full marketing strategy for the quarter, for half a year, for the year, and then I just price it. How much would it cost to do everything that I want to do? And that's the budget. Simple enough, right? Problem here, of course, is that you dream big, and then somebody always comes and rains on your parade in the form of slapping you with reality. We don't have that much money, but for some companies it works if you really, if you don't go too crazy, if you go very kind of methodical and look at the funnels that worked for you in the past few years. So the second one is very simple. Doesn't come from the budget, comes from the strategy, and say, okay, this is what I want to do, and this is what we'll do. This is what how it's gonna cost us. The third one. 80-20 rule. I love the 80-20 rule. I'm also a professor at IDC. I teach marketing at the MBA programs, and I can tell you this works for so many angles. Usually, 20% of the students will make 80% of the noise. 20% of the students will make 80% of the problems. 20% of the students will actually do the work for the other 80% of the students. And in life, you have it, probably 20% of your decisions lead to 80% of your results or your effect in life, however you want to take it. In this context, what we do is what we do, actually. It's the hybrid approach, which means we reverse engineer the marketing strategy. I understand that these are the things that work for us. These are the things that I want to scale, and these are the things that I want to experiment next year. It's the full, no reality budget marketing strategy. I take that and I shortlist it, and I have a very strong debate with the whole team of really kind of voting for each and every funnel from top to bottom. You'll end up with a list of acquisition tactics that can be 50, 100, 150 funnels wide. And each one will present their arguments. And in the end, you'll discuss each and every funnel, potential or already existing, and you'll have a list. And what you'll do then is you'll take the 20% that most of the team felt it would be wise to start with. You go down that list, because all of it has kind of costs, and you stop where it sums up to the sum that the CFO or the CEO told you. That's what you have. So this is also will give you kind of like, there's an Israeli term called kastach, which is covering your own ass. But if you do this, it's very methodical, it's very transparent, it's very clear why and how you did it. So you have all these funnels, and you can say, well, I can go for days. I have acquisition funnels to test or to scale from here to wherever. You, the CFO or the CEO, tells me you can only do up until number 28. Fair enough, but realize this is only up until 28. And then if it works, awesome. If it doesn't work, the mistakes are you can take accountability for, because it means, oh, number 14 we actually thought should be here, it's actually maybe number 60. But these are things that are a lot more accurate to look at also retrospectively and have a discussion over. So this is what we did. When we built the budget, 3 main elements, and you should divide them conceptually as such. People first, then the tools you need to pay for, and then the media. So all of these 3 are different aspects. You have to start with the people who will do it, and only then you can have a derivative of the tools and the budgets. A few considerations for budgeting the team. You should tie your budget to specific marketing KPIs. If you can do that and you have a big enough team, and you can take very strong, important KPIs and give it to them, and then tell them, by the way, I'm paying $70,000 this year for this particular KPI, you better deliver. What you get is actually accountability and not just a whole kind of high level KPI that everybody's kind of semi contributing to semi no. It will make people focus on the metrics that justify the budget, the cliche that what gets measured gets managed. But if you connect it to the numbers and the money that you're spending, and the employees know that, there's no reason to not have a transparent budget, by the way, other than salaries, of course. Then people will actually help you move the whole ship towards the actual KPIs that matter, and you're all in one shot. Other than keeping them in the dark, having a budget, telling them what to do, and in the end, being surprised that they didn't focus on 100% sync on the KPIs that you had. The third one is actually very important in startup and in pivoting culture. It will make cutting backs and spending pivots really clear. If you have somebody who is a PPC manager and their life basically depends, their job basically depends on, or their progress is on how much budget they're spending, it doesn't matter if it doesn't work and you're not getting ROI. If you cut budgets from them, they'll get disappointed, they'll get discouraged. If they understand exactly what this money is supposed to be doing and how clear the ROI should be, then if you create these type of connections between KPI and the dollars, it will be much easier for you and for them to accept pivoting that are rapid and not look at it as an attack on their scope of responsibility, on their career progress, etc. Second thing is you should take into account different geos cost structure. This is something I got slapped in the face for years ago. Again, I thought I knew what I'm talking about, and then we opened a year and a half ago a branch in New York City, and I got slapped in the face by reality again. So you need to kind of take into account the average salary in the place where you're at. Obviously, the state is much costlier. The employer costs that are different. I mean, usually the employer cost in Israel, I would say 1.27 to 1.31 on the brutto salary. In the state, it's different. It's a different game. The office costs, which are very, very different between Israel and the States, and recruitment. Recruitment in the ones of you who didn't recruit in the States, it's ridiculously expensive. 2, 3, 4 salaries sometimes I've heard just to get the right person from a headhunter. So you need to take that into account. Budget for raises. This is all consideration about the people budgeting, right? Budget for raises in the middle of the year because you'll need them. Budget for commissions if you have commission-based positions, and budget for retention bonuses. Something interesting that I've started seeing and doing more, less in Israel, but more in other countries, in London, in the States, and actually also in China. You should consider having a retention bonus in the end of the year, especially in the time like now. Obviously, our crazy market is not going to go up forever. Don't want to be the bearer of bad news, but this is just how reality is. But now, as more and more companies are getting more and more money, there's a certain limit of amounts of people that they can recruit, which takes the salary higher. Okay, which means in times where the market is growing, you have a very high probability of your good people being attempted to being poached, right? So having a retention bonus in place is a very good way to get people to take down the attrition rate of people leaving your company. So consider that. Yeah.
Why did you say not so much in Israel?
In what respect?
Regard to retention bonuses.
It's starting to. It's already there with development. With software engineer, I'm starting to hear it a lot more. I will definitely experiment with this on marketing. I'll tell you what though. The really, really good people that you want in your organization will tell you, okay, so don't take it out of my monthly salary and give it to me in the end. I want that as a bonus, which in Israel doesn't work that much. So you can call it a 13th salary, which is something Microsoft kind of pioneered years ago, or you can call it literally a retention bonus, seniority bonus, or whatever. It's definitely going to get into Israel, especially as the workforce is getting more and more competitive. So budgeting for raises. Okay, I have just a few more minutes. Budgeting for raises. This is how I do raises. I either do 0%, 10%, or 15% every year. This is what the employee should expect. I do 0% if the person is let goable. I mean, if they'll get offended and let's say, okay, I'm not getting a raise this year, fine. I also take that into account. The 0%. 10% for a good, solid performing employee. 15% for somebody who's extraordinary. That's all I do. It's a very important scheme. I say it on the company level. So if somebody's getting a 0%, they know they need to step up their game. If they're getting 10, they'll want to get the 15 next year. One man's opinion. Take it how you want. I want to take 2 minutes to show you the example budget. Where is it? Yeah. Okay, great. I don't know. It's very small, but obviously I own SDR and business development in Appsee, and this file will be sent right to all of you after this session. But I put it by people, tools, media, and others. I'll just read it to you. People, you have the positions. By the way, this is a very good time to mention that I'm doing it in-house. But if I wasn't 100% sure on everything that I'm going to be doing, I would probably outsource it. Wink, wink, penguin strategies. Tools. Your MailChimp, Slack, Unbounce, Trend Demon, BuzzSumo, Big Stock, Keyword Hero, Hotjar, SEMrush. You could either own Salesforce budget or not. Don't try to own it. It's a lot of money. Give it to the sales. Even though you have some people using Salesforce. I have others. What do I have under others? We have a graphic designer, which is about $2,500 a month. By the way, I changed all the numbers here to not offend anyone. Content productions, like videos, Upwork programs, everything around that. Outsourced task, like Fiverr, small things that I need to do and I don't want to go big on. And team building, which is important. I just put, I don't know, $1,000 every quarter. Fun day, wine tasting, pool out, whatever. So I do that for the marketing. Again, you'll get the template. And I budget for growth. Again, each person should have a raise somewhere within the year by the time that they started working. Conferences. How much does the conference cost? By the way, I added 2 spreadsheets, additional spreadsheets for you. One is conference calculation. So all of the different things you need to take into account when you go into a conference, from the backdrop to the giveaways, to the swag, to the scanning app, to the hotels, to the flight or whatever, you can use that template. And in the end, you have a certain amount of budget. Want to finish off.
Numbers here are total salary or cost per employer?
This is what's presented to the company. So it's total. It's 2 more. This. It's overall. So this is what's going to get out of the bank account. This is why I had another spreadsheet of salary calculation. So for Israel, for example, it depends on what your contract is with the employer, but you multiply by 1.27, for example, and that's the amount. Obviously, you take everything to dollars because it's sexier.
These were real numbers, or you said you made them up?
They were real numbers. The names were not. Yeah, but don't base your salaries over what I put in.
I just meant in general.
Yeah, definitely. You'll need to adjust the budget. We're talking startups, right? You'll need to adjust the budget every quarter. Why? Because 3 things are going to change it. The dollar rate is going to affect your spending. The employee attrition. Imagine somebody's going in the middle of the way. You'll have to start recruiting cost, time that is you don't get production, etc. And the actual performance. Some things work really well, some things don't. It's better to overspend than underspend. I cannot stress this enough. It's better to overspend than underspend. In startups, sometimes the sales doesn't deliver. It's not only about you. And if the sales doesn't deliver and you were waiting for a big chunk of budget in the end of the year so you can experiment with, all of a sudden the CFO is like, sorry, I have to take it away. It's not really yours, okay? So it's better to overspend. It's better to spend earlier than later because the last quarter is challenging. Everybody is spending. If you see the customer acquisition cost, they always go higher in the end of the year. Why? Because every marketing on the planet is dumping all their excess budgets into the platform. So the competition is much higher. So try to spend earlier. Also, consider the fact that a budget is only experimental. If you can prove to the CFO, the CEO, that you have an ROI positive funnel right now, You will never hear the sentence, oh, so don't dump more dollars into a machine that makes us money, right? You'll start getting on top of what you had currently. So go big and then reconsider. Spend more on people and less on media. $1,000 more on somebody's salary is something is will enable you to get a superstar from another company, versus the ROI that you get on PPC spending. In most cases, I see investing in people as being worth it. And the last thing, consider negotiating. What do I mean? You're a marketer, you should market your marketing budget. Expect to have pushbacks, expect to have different views from the CEO and the CFO. I connected what was said here earlier, budget for 1.3, 1.4 of the budget, and haggle, we are in the Middle East. And then you'll have a budget that you're happy with and maybe a bit of an extra that you didn't even expect.